File had been sealed for 11 years before I was the one assigned to open it. That is not an accident. In the archive, sealing is a procedure of last resort, reserved for records whose continued circulation causes more harm than their burial. 42 years of service, I had sealed 7 files myself. Mineral surveys that contradicted territorial treaties. A xenobiological report that would have started a war. 3 sets of contact transcripts that, when read in full, revealed our diplomats had been lying to the High Compact for a generation. Sealing in our tradition does not mean destroyed. It means, not yet. It means, whoever opens this next must be prepared. I was not prepared. The case file was labeled First Contact, Rimward Boundary Species, Designation Provisional, Humans. 40 years of field observation, 12 contact teams, over 9,000 hours of recorded interaction. The Orkai had been proud of this record. I remembered the academic papers, the celebrated field summaries, the junior archivists who built careers on the data. We had made contact with a new species, and they had been, by every measure, cooperative, gentle. They came out to meet our ships at the boundary. They gave us names for themselves. They answered questions. They even seemed curious about us in return. In a mild, pleasant way. The way something examines a thing it has already decided is not a threat, should have been the first signal. I opened the outer index at my station. Alone, the lights low, the archive humming around me. Standard protocol for sealed files. No assistance, no parallel review. Whatever had warranted the seal, I would meet it first. I was looking for the administrative reason. The diplomat's lie. The contradicted treaty. The number that didn't add up. Instead, I found a field recorder's private note. Appended to contact log 7 sigma, from a researcher named Vel Torath, filed in the 17th year of observation. It had not been flagged. No one had acted on it. Either they had read it and decided it was stress, or they had not read it at all. In our archive, documents filed as private notes are not indexed for search. They exist as marginalia. Most or nothing. This one said, "I do not believe these are the principles." 6 words. I read them 3 times. Then I read the 17 pages Vel Torath had appended below them, in small, careful script. The kind of writing a researcher produces. When they are afraid, someone else will read it. And equally afraid, no one will. She had noticed it in year 12. The humans, if that was still the right word, did not age correctly. Over 12 years of contact, the same faces came to meet the Orkai ships, not similar faces, the same ones. A species with a lifespan our biologists had projected from their apparent biology should have turned over at least 1 generation in that time. None of them had. She had gone back through contact imagery from years 1 through 12 and run the comparative analysis herself, quietly, at night. The margin of physiological change across 12 years of observation, statistically 0. She had other evidence. The humans who came to meet them never slept. Contact sessions ran long, often through periods when biological rest would be mandatory for any organism our scientists had ever catalogued, and the humans remained alert, responsive, patient. They made no errors. In 9,000 hours of interaction, there was not a single instance of a misremembered fact, a contradicted statement, a moment of fatigue or grief or confusion. They answered questions with a consistency that, when Vel Torath charted it, less like memory and more like retrieval. And then the line that stopped me completely. 40 years of observation. No Orkai team has ever seen a human child, a human elder, a human dwelling, a human dead. We have seen only the ones who come out to meet us at the boundary and go back in. I sat with that for a long time. I pulled every field summary from years 17 through 40. The ones filed after Vel Torath's note. All by different researchers who had rotated through the contact program, none of whom had read her marginalia. I was looking for contradictions. Anything that would let me close the file, write a clean administrative note, reseal it with a better reason. I found instead a pattern so clean it made the back of my neck go cold. Every contact session in the last 23 years had been initiated, without exception, by the humans. Not aggressively, politely. They arrived at the boundary point before the Orkai ships, already waiting, as though they had known the schedule. The field teams had noted this and recorded it as a sign of interest, of enthusiasm. Cooperative species eager for continued dialogue. It had gone into the summary reports as a positive indicator. In 23 years, no Orkai team had initiated a contact that session and reached the humans first. I thought about what that meant. I thought about it for a long time, and the more I thought, the colder the room became, even though the temperature had not changed. A species that always arrives first. A species that does not age, does not sleep, does not err, does not grieve. A species that answers every question precisely, but has never once allowed our teams to move past the boundary line. Always meeting us here, at the edge, never beyond. A species that has been conducting what we called a dialogue for 40 years, and in 40 years has given us names and faces and pleasant conversation, and nothing else. The principles Vel Toreth had written, she meant, whoever sent these, whoever they represent. Because she had concluded in her quiet, careful script, and I agreed with her, sitting in the low light of the archive, 11 years after her note was filed and then buried. What the Orkai had spent 40 years studying was not humanity. It was what humanity had placed at its border. Something that wore the shape of the species. Something patient and precise and constructed for a single long purpose. To stand at the edge of the territory and speak to whatever came near, in a language it would understand, with a face it would not fear, for as long as was necessary. Real humans had not sent a fleet, had not sent a warning, had sent no ultimatum, no envoy, no soldier. They had sent a reflection. And the reflection had been standing at the boundary of our maps, meeting our ships, answering our questions, and watching us for 40 years, while the principals stayed behind the line and remained entirely unseen. I thought about what that required. Patience, the planning, the sheer architectural cold intelligence of a species that had decided the most effective way to manage its border was force, not walls, not prohibition, but this. A face at the threshold that was not the face. A speaker that was not the speaker. Presence so thorough and so consistent that an archive full of trained professionals spent 4 decades studying it and never thought to ask whether they were looking at the real thing. They had a file on the humans. We were proud of it. We did not have a file for this. I wrote the reclassification myself. It took me 4 hours to find the right category, and in the end I invented one, because nothing in our existing taxonomy fit. Not dangerous. Danger implies the thing has made a move toward you. Not unknown. We had 9,000 hours of interaction with its face. Not cautious or territorial or closed. All of those assume a boundary being defended. What I needed was a word for a space that has been watching you. Patiently and completely, from behind a mask it made before you arrived, and has not yet decided what to do with what it has learned. The Orkai language does not have that word. I added a notation to the taxonomy index. Category pending formal designation, pending further review by a committee not yet convened. Then I sealed the file again, not because I was told to, because I understood, sitting in that room, that the alternative was circulation, summary reports, academic papers, or building citations, and that what the galaxy's cartographers needed to know was not the contents of this file, but the fact of a very simple silence. The sector is marked. The boundary is noted. The line on the chart ends there at the rim, and the annotation reads what it has always read. Approach not advised, contact status ongoing. What the annotation does not say is that the ongoing contact has never been with the humans. What the annotation does not say is that we do not know how long they have been standing at that border in the shape they chose for us. What the annotation does not say is that in 40 years of dialogue, not once, not in 9,000 hours, not in 12 contact rotations, not in a single session across 4 decades, did any of them ask us to leave. They were simply there, waiting, patient as geography, patient as the space between stars. I filed the entry, I closed the terminal. I have not spoken of it since.